I described this to you yesterday on CBS Sports HQ that this is a drunken bar fight. Like neither of these teams are perfect. They're both sloppy. And how do you see what's the actual football that we can put on paper in terms of our expectations and where this is decided?
I think Bama, this is the thing, I think they've had to rely on Jalen Milroe. And this is one of the things I was doing when I was prepping for LSU A&M and going back to A&M, what they did to Mizzou.
Yeah.
I think that's what Bama needs to do to Missouri. And I think they will get away from Milroe having to carry so much of this offense. I think they'll get away from Milroe having to throw it 50 times. And I think they'll get Jam Miller and the run game going more. I think that's got to be their priority number one. And I do think they have success doing that. And it's hard for me. I think Missouri is fraudulent. I don't think they're as good. And I don't think that's any shock to anybody. I know they came back and they had an impressive win against Auburn. I just don't think they're as good as we thought coming into the season, or maybe early this season when they got in the top 6. And I think Bama's more into a place of desperation, but I think it does boil down to Bama getting back to running the football. Their offensive line, which has been struggling, they've been going against some really good defensive fronts. I think what they needed to do was go against Missouri's front.
When you look at Alabama the last couple of weeks, their passing offense has been awful. Like it was good there for a while. Like they weren't, Jalen was playing pretty well, all things considered. And you go game to game against, Wisconsin, Georgia, Vandy, they were able to move the ball in the air. They couldn't do it against South Carolina. They couldn't do it against Tennessee. And I think the common denominator between those two teams is up front, like you kind of just mentioned, Danny. Its defensive lines are pretty damn good. And there was a lot of pressure on Jalen, and he was kind of just flustered all damn day in both of those games. I feel like if I'm facing Mizzou, I don't put Mizzou's defense near the level of where I would put Tennessee or South Carolina, particularly on the defensive line. And not to say they're bad, but I just don't think they're at that level. But I also think that they are much better there than they are on the back end. So if I am Alabama and I want to expose this defense, I kind of want to do it through the air. So can we see them get back to how they looked early in the year, where they weren't just having Jalen run, forcing him or by choice repeatedly? Can they get a little bit more of the drop back kind of game going? Can they work to the receivers? Let's see if they can find big plays that way, because I think that is where Mizzou is most vulnerable. On the other side, I don't have a ton of faith in the Mizzou offense right now. I think that, first of all, Brady Cook is an absolute stud for what he did last week, going to the hospital, getting back, coming back, playing, and then leading the comeback late. But just overall, I think this offense really misses Cody Schrader. Like, they weren't an incredible rushing offense last year, but Schrader was very reliable workhorse, a guy who could keep the chains moving and helped keep that offense on the field. And I think helped set things up for that passing game, because defenses had to be worried about him. And I just don't think they have that element this year. And I think they're easier to defend because of it. And you're seeing Luther Burden's not having an incredible year. Weiss is not having an incredible year. They're having great moments, but overall the consistency and the performance just hasn't been there. So it's hard for me to trust that they're going to figure that out this week against Alabama, because even if I don't think this Alabama defense is incredible, or at least to the level it's been that we've known, and it's had problems against explosive passing offenses, I just don't know that Mizzou is capable of exploiting it as often as they're going to need to win this game. And I think that's the key. I think Brady Cook and those receivers have to have the best game that they've had of this season by a lot if Mizzou is going to pull this off.
Fully agree with you, assuming we get like some kind of baseline level on Milroe. To me, Milroe has not looked right for a couple weeks, and like he didn't look nearly as explosive in the Vanderbilt game. He didn't look very good. I mean, he was awful against Tennessee. That was like one of the worst statistical games Alabama quarterbacks played in like a decade. So like, what's more likely, that all of a sudden he sucks for no reason after lighting up Georgia, or that he, is more dinged up than they're letting on? I know which option I would choose. Like, how much juice does he have in the tank? Because they may need him. and the legs. I know McElroy was talking about how like the fundamentals in terms of the pocket have just fallen apart the last 2 weeks. Just like throwing with your feet, like put totally together, and just a lot of weird stuff, or just like losing the fundamentals, which maybe he's thinking too much. I don't know, but I mean, Bama's definitely beatable if he's not right. Like, I'm not saying that they will lose, because obviously they've said what it's high ankle for Brady Cook.
Mhm.
So who knows like how bad that thing blows up this week, and if he's able to move around. Bama's got some pass rushers. Like, they can get after you. But I mean, to me, a lot of this is Milroe. You know, you take Milroe off Alabama, they're like a 6-6 team, I think.
Take Milroe off Alabama. Are the rest of the pieces better or worse than the non-quarterback pieces of South Carolina?
Shoot, South Carolina just can't throw. That's tough. Like, assuming Simpson could chuck it around a little. 6-6 probably too much. Probably 7-5.
Yeah,
I should probably kind of. But like, I mean, it's a pretty big drop off from his best. I don't know how big the drop off is. It's certainly something from where he is, or how he has been playing the last 2 weeks. Maple in the chat, I think, had the stats. I mean, like, really concerning stuff there. Where are we at? Yeah, Milroe last 2 weeks, 6.5 yards per attempt. I mean, that's like benchable level. 2 touchdowns, 4 picks.
There's been a lot about his mechanics. It's almost like, and I think I texted you guys in the group chat, it felt like last year's version of Jalen Milroe, early last year. And it just, there's something about mechanics that are important. This is why I'm such a believer in like being a natural passer of the football. Like, you're naturally accurate. You can fine tune it, but I just don't know if Milroe's naturally accurate. And it still doesn't mean they couldn't win with him, and they might maybe, he could. I mean, shoot, last year he took them all the way to the playoffs. That's more of like an NFL perspective. Like, where does his draft go? But I think once you see like you're pressured, you get hurt, that's when you go back to what you naturally just do, which happens all the time in the NFL. And then now we're seeing it happen. So you kind of revert to what you are. And I just don't think he's a very naturally accurate passer, because there were a lot of plays. Both those quarterbacks left so many yards on the field with plays to be made, and they weren't easy throws. I mean, I think of him getting out, scrolling to his right, scrambling to his right, and there's like a comeback route or a guy coming back to the ball and it just bounces to him. Like, I think it's a combination of that. Plus, I do think he's really banged up.
Is there any result that calms the consternation around the Alabama fan base?
Yeah, if they beat the hell out of Missouri.
Yeah.
Think so?
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is entirely
Resounding
possible.
win.
Mm-hmm.
Resounding win. But
they have like Texas A&M did it. So there you go. Like, there's your example. It was at home. They came out, dominated from start to finish. It doesn't have to be the same score.
Right.
But I mean, you would like to see a 24-3, 31-10.
But if this thing is like 28-28 going into the fourth quarter,
panic, booze, all of it.
Yeah.
I do feel
throwing
like
stuff on the field to get the officials to change the call.
Hey, man. Oh, no, I don't have a good McConaughey, so I don't want to do it right now. But when McConaughey released a statement, and then that was a news item that McConaughey had released a statement, and he used the term BS in all cap, like a B and an S, like 4 times in that statement. I mean, that was a voice to text of an official statement if I've ever seen one.